I arrived in Los Angeles when I was 22, dragging a scuffed suitcase and a head full of fragile dreams. I wanted to act, not just be famous, not just be seen, but to perform something that mattered. I wanted to be somebody. Everyone said I had the look. Tan skin, wide eyes, and the kind of youthful fragility that casting directors seem to eat alive. At first, I thought that was a compliment. Now I know better. The first time I met him, Piddy was in the gold-tinted corridors of Empire House Studios. The walls were lined with platinum records and golden trophies. Piddy didn't audition me. He just invited me for a chat in his office. He wore sunglasses indoors, the kind of man who never broke eye contact, even through 2 inches of designer lenses. He didn't ask what roles I wanted or what my dreams were. He asked how far I was willing to go. Then he stood up, walked over, and without warning, laid a hand on my shoulder. It slid down my back like grease.
Fame leaves a mark, baby,
he whispered. I froze. Back at my apartment, I stripped down and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. My skin still tingled where he touched me, and that's when I saw it. A red handprint, bright, raw, and burning across the middle of my back. It wasn't paint. It wasn't a bruise. It didn't hurt, didn't fade, didn't wipe away. I scrubbed myself until my skin peeled, but the mark stayed. I stopped sleeping, stopped auditioning. My inbox was full, but my soul felt hollow. Weeks passed. Then came the white party. I wasn't invited as a guest. I was just a server. He threatened me, said if I didn't comply, he'd release the casting video from that day online. Everyone was dressed in white. Stark, ceremonial white. The kind of white that hides blood, but never sin. Celebrities mingled with producers. Influencers posed beside men who ran studios like kingdoms. That's when I started seeing them. Red handprints. On the backs of dancers. On the thighs of stylists. Around the necks of young interns. All glowing red under the same kind of white light that revealed mine. A woman leaned over the champagne table, and 5 deep red fingers wrapped around her bicep. It was Piddy's wife. And that's when I understood. Only the marked can see the marks. I was not alone. I joined a quiet group online, a closed circle of those who had seen the red handprints, survivors, not just women, men too, a cameraman, a backup vocalist, a personal trainer, all carried marks from the same parties, same rooms, same man. We shared stories, shared proof. We compiled our evidence, glitches in footage, unedited photos, glimpses of handprints in the cold fluorescence of dressing rooms, green rooms, hotel lobbies. We built a case. I told the others, we can do this. We can fight. But then, I got the message. A voice memo. From a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakable. Piddy.
You open your mouth, Hannah.
He said, calm as a scalpel.
And I'll open the vault. You know the one. Room 7, white party, champagne room. There's footage. You were drugged, but baby, the camera doesn't care. The internet won't either.
3 days later, the video dropped. Low res, grainy, dim lighting. But my face was unmistakable. I was dazed, barely able to stand. He was behind me, his hand pressed to my skin. It went viral before I could even scream. The headlines didn't say survivor. They said, actress caught in scandal with hip-hop mogul. Nobody forced her. Another clout chaser? Agents dropped me. My email filled with threats and offers, none of them professional. Studios blacklisted me. People whispered. Some looked at me with pity. Most didn't look at all. My career was over. No one wanted to hire the girl from the clip. No one cared how it got made. No one wanted the truth. I received a warning message.
There are still plenty of other casting videos. Be a good girl and do as you're told.
After that, the stories dried up. Some members of our circle vanished. One girl, the bravest among us, was found in a river. No one asked questions. I went back to being invisible. Months later, I saw a young actress stumble out of a club, the same dazed look I'd once worn. She had a fresh red mark just below her collarbone. I turned away. Back home, I stripped in front of the mirror, and I saw. Under the harsh white light, they emerged. Not one, not five, but dozens of red handprints, crawling across my skin like a living plague. My shoulders, my thighs, my neck, my ribs. They weren't bruises. They weren't burns. They were brands, punishments, proof of every time I turned away, every time I stayed quiet, every time I let it happen. I dropped to the floor, shaking. I had wanted to be seen. Now I couldn't look at myself. The marks were everywhere, some new, still glowing, others old, deep like wine stains, faded but never gone. Some fingers dug into my flesh like they were trying to pull me underground. I could barely breathe. Then, a new one appeared right before my eyes. It bled into existence, blooming around my throat like a hand trying to strangle me from the inside out. Just the red, always the red. I clawed at my neck as if I could rip it off, erase it, scrub myself clean of every secret I'd buried under silence. But the handprints didn't just stain my skin. They owned me. They were justice for the voices I didn't protect. They were the rage of every soul I abandoned to save myself. I curled into a ball on the cold bathroom tile, sobbing soundlessly, because the red fingers around my throat were no longer symbolic. They were real, and they were winning. But I still had hands, still had breath. So I wrote. I bled it into pages. I titled it, The Red Handprints. It's not a cry for help. It's a record of rot, a monument to the cowardice that lives behind fame and filters. Maybe someone will read it. Maybe not. Maybe they'll see the marks too. Maybe they'll finally scream before it's too late.
They say the world was once ruled by fear, not joy. Before Christmas became a time of celebration, it was a season of terror. Winter nights were longer, colder, and filled with the dread of monstrous creatures. Bipedal reindeer, with fur as black as the void, twisted antlers like thorns of hell, and eyes glowing red as embers. These were no ordinary reindeer. They didn't pull sleighs, they rode them, and their sleds weren't loaded with gifts of cheer, but with the tormented souls of the damned, cursed to drag the reindeer through the skies, screaming into the frigid night. Every year, at the end of winter, the air would fill with the haunting sound of bells, signaling the arrival of their terrible gifts, not toys or candy, but death, fear, and despair. The village was gripped by unspeakable dread. Cursed presence appeared everywhere, There was the wooden mask, carved with an eerie precision, which once worn fused to its victim's face, trapping them forever behind its hollow stare. Another was the ominous countdown clock, its hands ticking backward. It would drain the very life from whoever held it, leaving only an empty shell behind. Each year, these cursed artifacts would appear on doorsteps, bringing ruin to all who touched them. No one escaped their fate. That fateful night, my mother and I huddled together in our small wooden cabin, every light extinguished. The darkness felt like a blanket of safety, but we knew better. The reindeer didn't need light to find us. They could smell fear. And in our home, fear was thick. The bells came first, their chime low and ominous, cutting through the howling wind. Then, the front door burst open, laughter followed, a high-pitched, maniacal sound that made my skin crawl. A small, tattered box waited on the doorstep, as if it had always been there. Its faded tag bore the words, "The Sinner Evelyn," my mother's name. I begged her not to touch it, but her hands shook as she reached for it, as if she were hypnotized. Inside was a threadbare doll. Its eyes, dull at first, flared a hellish red as its stitched mouth curled into a sinister grin. My mother's body seized violently. She fell, writhing on the floor, frothy foam bubbling from her lips as she mumbled in an unearthly tongue. Her only sin was raising me alone. Yet for that, she was condemned to a fate worse than death. Before I could scream, they came. The monstrous reindeer seized her, dragging her to their sleigh. She became another cursed soul bound to their infernal sleigh, leaving me alone with the cold and the fear. Desperate and enraged, I grabbed the nearest thing, pine cones scattered near the hearth, and hurled them at the creatures. To my shock, the reindeer shrieked, their movements becoming erratic. They scratched at their fur as if trying to rid themselves of some unseen torment. One by one, they stumbled and retreated into the night, their howls of pain echoing through the frozen air. It wasn't until later that I realized what had happened. Pine. These monsters were allergic to it. The scent, the texture, it weakened them. And so, I began to prepare. For an entire year, I worked tirelessly. My family had always been woodworkers, and I knew the forest well. I harvested pine, crafting weapons and traps. I forged a plan, waiting for the next winter, the next chance to avenge my mother and end the reign of these beasts. When the time came, I stood at the edge of the pine forest, wooden sword in hand and a sack full of pine cones slung over my shoulder. I called out to them, taunting them, daring them to face me. They came, as I knew they would. The bells tolled, the sky darkened, and the ground shook beneath their heavy steps. The lead reindeer, its antlers larger and more twisted than the rest, bared its jagged teeth and charged. I ran, leading them deep into the forest where the air was thick with the scent of pine. I ducked behind a large tree, holding my breath as the creatures slowed, their heads swinging wildly, unable to find me. From the shadows, I struck. With a single thrust of my wooden sword, I jabbed it straight into the mouth of the lead reindeer. Its body collapsed, its death cry piercing the night. The others hesitated, disoriented and vulnerable. I hurled pine cones at them, watching as they thrashed and stumbled, their strength waning. One by one, they fell. When the dawn broke, I emerged from the forest victorious. I had captured the surviving reindeer, binding them with ropes infused with pine resin. They would no longer bring death and despair to my village. Instead, I repurposed their sleigh. I filled it with gifts, dolls, sweets, and books I had crafted over the year, and rode through the village, delivering them to the homes of those who had lived righteously. I urged the people to embrace kindness and generosity, for these virtues were invisible to the reindeer. And so, Christmas was born, not as a time of fear, but of joy and giving. Each year I return with my sleigh, pulled by the subdued reindeer, their savage instincts kept in check by the scent of pine that lingers on my sleigh's reins. But I remind everyone, the reindeer are still out there, lurking, waiting for the chance to escape. And so we light our homes with warmth and kindness, and we hang pine wreaths on our doors to keep the darkness at bay. This is the tale of how I, once a terrified boy named Nick, became a legend. Brazil was everything I dreamed it would be. Warm sun, vibrant music, and miles of golden sand stretching as far as the eye could see. Miles, my best friend and perpetual thrill-seeker, had planned every detail of our trip. He swore up and down it would be life-changing. So, when he suggested we visit a unique, authentic snake massage spa, I hesitated. The very mention of snakes made my stomach churn, but Miles laughed off my concerns.
Come on, man,
He said, grinning from ear to ear.
it's all the rage. People say it's therapeutic. Plus, what's the point of a vacation if we don't try something crazy?
Against my better judgment, I agreed. The spa was tucked away in a narrow alley, its faded sign barely legible under the dim streetlights. The door creaked ominously as we entered, and the air inside was thick with the mingling scents of incense and damp earth.
Relax.
Miles said, clapping me on the shoulder.
It's supposed to feel ancient, authentic.
The receptionist, a tall woman with piercing green eyes, led us into a room that looked like a jungle terrarium. Vines hung from the ceiling, and the ground slithered. Hundreds of snakes of varying sizes and colors writhed on the floor, their scales catching the dim light like tiny shards of glass. Okay, nope, I'm out. I whispered, my voice cracking, but Miles was already stepping out of his shoes.
They're harmless, non-venomous. Just let them crawl around a bit. It's supposed to be good for circulation.
He lowered himself onto the snake-covered floor, leaning back with a satisfied sigh as the creatures began slithering over his legs.
See? Totally fine.
He said, waving me over. My body refused to move, but Miles's teasing was relentless. Eventually, I convinced myself to take a single step. The moment my bare foot touched the floor, the cold, slimy texture of a snake's scales brushed against my skin. I froze. Another snake curled around my ankle, its tiny, harmless bite sending a strange, tingling sensation up my leg. My heart raced, but as more snakes swarmed around me, I began to feel oddly numb.
Not so bad, right?
Miles grinned. I wanted to scream at him, but my throat was dry. The next phase of the treatment was supposed to be deep relaxation. We were led to 2 massage tables and instructed to lie face down. The room was dark now, lit only by flickering candles. The snakes had been cleared from the floor, but the eerie hissing sound remained, echoing faintly through the walls. As I lay there, the sensation of something smooth and heavy rolling across my back made me shudder. It's just part of the process, I whispered to myself. Breathe. It's fine. For a moment, I managed to relax. The weight moving along my spine felt oddly soothing, like a warm compress. But then I felt it slither up my shoulder. That's not a hand. I muttered, eyes snapping open. The sight that greeted me froze my blood. A massive snake was coiled around Miles, its thick body constricting him like a vice. He looked at me, gasping for air, but he was smiling.
It's fine. These snakes are trained. It's...
His voice broke off into a choking wheeze as the snake tightened its grip. Panic surged through me. "Miles!" I shouted, jumping off the table. But before I could reach him, something heavy dropped onto my back. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. It was another snake. This one was even larger, its muscular body wrapping itself around my chest and shoulders. Its scales were cold and rough, scratching against my skin as it coiled tighter and tighter. I clawed at it, trying to free myself, but the more I struggled, the tighter it squeezed. My vision blurred as my chest heaved, desperate for air. I could hear Miles screaming now, his voice a hoarse, guttural cry.
Help me!
I tried to look at him, but the snake's tail wrapped around my neck, pinning my head in place. My pulse pounded in my ears as the edges of my vision darkened. With one final burst of adrenaline, I threw myself sideways off the table. The snake's grip loosened just enough for me to suck in a ragged breath. I hit the floor hard, the impact jolting through my ribs, but I was free. For a moment I lay there, gasping and disoriented. Then I heard it, a low, guttural hiss. I turned my head just in time to see the snake lunging toward me, its massive jaws unhinged and gaping wide. I scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The snake's mouth engulfed me, its sharp teeth slicing into my skin as it began to swallow me whole.